abiding friendships have developed after that. And here, apart from all the mediator friends, I would like to mention Mr. Satyan Menon, Justice Sri Jagan, Justice K. Ramakrishnan, Justice Mushtaq, and all these people who have, become very good friends over a long period of time. Of course, there are mediators like Mr. Tangachan and then Vijay Kumar, Suresh, so many others, Leena. I can't name all of you, but each one I have known, I have worked with them, and I've had the privilege of spending a long time with them. It has been a wonderful time. As a matter of fact, I used to travel at one time to Kerala so often that my wife told me that I think it is time you settle down in Kerala with the second marriage or something. So to that extent, I used to go to Kerala. So it has a very special corner in my heart. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Tangachan. Without much ado, I'll just straight away jump into the subject. As we all know, see, technology has had a very ubiquitous presence in our lives for a very long time. First, we had the IT revolution that was followed by the digital revolution that has brought about some very remarkable changes in the way we communicate, in the way we entertain ourselves. As I was saying, in this lockdown, Netflix and Prime, Amazon has been a sort of a godsend where you could just indulge yourself in binge watching your favorite series. The way we buy things with all these platforms like Amazon, Flipkart, Alibaba, and in the way we handle our money with the digitalization of our accounts, sitting at home. Because I always remember when I had to physically go and pay my bills, I always used to default for the simple reason that I'm a very lazy guy and would hate to go and pay the electricity bill, stand in the queue and pay it. Now all I have to do is just go on my computer and make the online payment. And so far, I've never had the problem of default in any of my payments ever since I started doing net banking. So, and even the way we develop our relationships, thanks to the development of social media platforms like Facebook and, what is that? The other one, Instagram, and so many other things. Thanks to Facebook, I was able to trace out a lot of friends, 30, 40 years back with whom I studied in school. I could get in touch with them, and now we are in touch and we know what is happening in each other's lives. So it has had a tremendous impact on all our lives. And I don't think that very few people who are either not on WhatsApp and not on Facebook, or who don't use a smartphone. Now, as with all other revolutions, the digital revolution also has come with a few problems. And I think one of the most important problems that we face, thanks to this digital revolution, is that it has compromised our privacy in a very big way. Today, if I just search for a particular product on Google, any of you can test it and see whether it happens to you also. But what happens with me is every time I go on Google and try to check a product, my Facebook page will immediately throw up at least 10 advertisements of the similar products. There was also a joke circulating on WhatsApp. I'm sure some of you would have heard this joke. When a man orders pizza, the lady who takes the order starts telling him what he should eat and what he should avoid. And she seems to know everything from his health condition to his financial condition. And as they say today, data is the new oil. Oil was one of the most crucial resources once upon a time, but today it is data. And I'm told tomorrow it is going to be water, of which Kerala has plenty. So I think people are going to fight over Kerala after some time, maybe 10 years or 20 years down the line. So every aspect of our lives is data driven. So we have no other choice but to live with it. There is no running away from it. There is no hiding from it. Google auntie is watching you all the time and knows so much about you, much more about you than either whether even your spouse may not know so much, even your father and mother may not know so much, including what your preferences are in various aspects of your life. Everything Google knows. Now, let us see how it has impacted the legal profession. I started, as Tangachan pointed out, I started my practice in the late 80s. And back in the 80s and 90s, we used to get printed cause lists. I don't know about the other high courts, but Badarappa is here and she will watch for it. And there are many lawyers from Chennai also. We used to get these cause lists. The delivery boy will just throw the cause list over the gate. They will all be in loose, unbound sheets. These sheets will get scattered, and in order to avoid them getting scattered, you had to wait from morning 6 o'clock or 5:30 also sometimes, waiting for him to come so that you can receive it in your hand. Then another ordeal would start where you have to arrange them in page numbers and judge wise and quote number wise. You have to arrange, and then almost 200 pages you have to scan. Like you have to read each and every page minutely to see if any of your cases are listed. Then you would tag all those sheets together in proper order, and then you check whether your case has come. Then you have to search for the case bundle. So imagine your tension starts from 5:30 in the morning and goes on till 10:30 by the time you reach the court, and it continues because you're there before the court, you're arguing your matter, or you're waiting for your case to reach. Either way, you're stressed out from 5:30 in the morning. Today, what has happened with technology, thanks to the internet, you get the entire list the previous evening itself. All you need to do is just type out your initials, click search, and there, all your cases for the day are listed. They pop up on the screen, and you have the whole night to prepare for the next day's argument. Another aspect is, of course, searching for case law. In the good old days when we used to work in our senior's office, if any case would come, one of us would be assigned to read one of the journals, either AIR or SEC or MLJ or TNLJ. So many journals were there, and we had to go through each of the indexes, the indices given, the topical notes, the head notes that were given, to see if any case law would suit our case. So all these neatly bound volumes, and that is how lawyers, gained this notoriety of being intellectuals, because they have a whole lot of books. I remember one one of my cousins from the US had come home, and she saw my office and saw all the books stacked over there, and she exclaimed in surprise. She said, "Do you read all of them?" Now I didn't want to disappoint
Excuse
her.
me, sir. Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Will you please bit louder? Will you please bit louder?
Yeah, sure.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
So my cousin had come home, and she saw all these, books, rows and rows of books stacked up in my office. And she asked me, she was surprised. She said, "Do you read all these books?" Now, I didn't want to appear like a fool before her. I said, "Yeah, I try to read them." So we had to painstakingly search for the case law. Now, today, the development that has taken place, you have websites. You have Manupatra, you have SEC Online, you have even free websites like Indian Qanun. All you need to do is type out your query and you get a list of options. Now, these are only two of the advantages that I have listed. Now, we have cause lists being displayed outside the court halls so that we know whether a case is reaching or not without having to step into the courtroom and ask some lawyer standing over there which is the matter that is going on. That used to be a habit, and some lawyers used to answer, some will just have a grimace on their faces, and you just have to ask somebody else. Now, this is how, epochs are being created. Now, we are living in such a fast-paced time where every 3 to 5 years is a new epoch in terms of how technology is developing. We have been under lockdown for close to 3 months now. Necessity, as they say, is the mother of invention. We humans are a very evolved species, and the main reason for our survival has been our ability to adapt. So what we did very quickly was to adapt to the lockdown situation. And here is where technology has come to our aid. The pandemic threat is not going to disappear very soon. For pre-COVID life to return, if it is ever going to return, it may take a very long time. It is bringing about some huge changes in the outlook of not just individuals, but also nations. Now, countries are looking at, taking a relook at their, travel policies, businesses, economies are facing new challenges. Even education is undergoing a huge paradigm change because now my grandsons are sitting at home, and every day from 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock, they have online classes. So the teachers come online and they take classes for them, and they give them homework, and that homework has to be done and emailed to the school. So that's how the schools are operating today. So education also is undergoing change. Take, for instance, this very meeting that we are having. There are so many people from different parts of the country, or all tuned in to listen to whatever I have to say here. Now, would any of you have really bought air tickets, traveled all the way to Chennai to listen to me if this Zoom facility was not there? And what about the meeting logistics, like fixing the venue, inviting important people to share the dais, inaugural lighting of lamps, mandatory bouquets, shawls, mementos? What about the manpower? People have to be stationed outside to help in registration formalities, testing the sound system, check the lighting, organize the refreshments. So a lot of things used to go into organizing the physical meetings that we used to have. I'm not saying that there is no merit in the actual physical meetings. Last week we celebrated Eid. Normally, what we would do is all the brothers and sisters, we would all gather at one person's house by turns and spend the evening together, just have some fun and laughter. Now, this year we couldn't do that. So, what I did was I arranged a meeting on Zoom. My niece from the US, a nephew from Dubai, brothers and sisters from different parts of the same city. We could all see each other sitting in the comforts of our homes without having to travel for hours together. Inquire about each other, tease each other, joke and laugh. So 1.5 hours was, just flew off. Also, look at the perspective. Like, could supposing if my niece, could she have traveled all the way from the US to be with us for Eid? My sister's husband is recuperating from an illness. Could she have come and joined us? But all of them could come because it was a virtual meeting. They could be sitting in their houses and they could take part in the meeting. Of course, see, the pleasure of meeting personally, the pleasure of hugging each other, eating together, laughing together, that was missing, no doubt about it. But the next best alternative was to at least, look at each other on the screen and say hello and talk to each other. Extraordinary times, as they say, call for extraordinary solutions. Technology cannot definitely supplement human relations. It can only complement it. Coming back to our legal profession, our development of social beings has defined the way we communicate with each other. As human beings, we are social animals. And for us, communication is a very important way of connecting with each other, relating to each other. Historically, our communication has been oral. Ever since we started learning language and we started speaking languages. Long distance communication used to be through letters, either sent through messengers or through pigeons. Then we had the radio, then the telephone, through which we could hear each other's voices even from long distances. Then with the advent of television, we could see what was happening in different parts of the world. With satellite technology, the whole world literally was brought into our sitting rooms with a flick of a switch. We had telegraph, we had fax, then came the emails. Now we have smartphones with apps which facilitate instant communication through either short message services, through video calls, to any part of the world. Like, for example, you take WhatsApp, we can form groups. We have groups of mediators, and we can communicate with each other. We can share knowledge with each other through this app. We have Telegram. There are so many other apps which help facilitate this. We have social media, of course, as I already said. We can trace and contact friends and relatives who have moved away to different parts of the world. We can now know what is happening to their lives. As a result, we can have real-time information of in the field of, for example, case law research. We have email communications. We are still lagging behind in the full use of technology to improve our efficiency. For a long time, I remember when first I got a computer for my office, it was only a glorified typewriter. The only advantage was we could make on-screen corrections in the document that you're typing out. So all you could do is you can type the document, you can save it, and then you can print it out. So that was the only use mostly that at least I was using the computer for. Of course, later on, then we started having email accounts and all that, and that was used for as a communication tool. As Mr. Vijay Kumar said, I would just like to tell here that we should not look at this issue of uh, legal profession being technology driven only as an issue arising due to a pandemic. Of course, the pandemic has brought this into sharp focus. The need for adapting technology has been brought into sharp focus by this pandemic. But what we need to do is to use this opportunity to look at long-term solutions. We need to see how we can increase access to justice for the common man. We need to see how we can bring justice to the doorstep of citizens instead of driving a litigant to go begging for justice from door to door. Now, today, for example, the Supreme Court of India is out of reach for ordinary litigants. We simply cannot afford the huge cost of the travel, the lawyer fees, the other litigating costs that they have to incur. This is where the technology would be the game changer. Let us look at virtual hearings, for instance. If supposing virtual hearings become commonplace, a client sitting in Chennai can engage a lawyer from Mumbai to conduct a case in Delhi without having to incur the cost of airfare, hotel bill, taxi fare for herself or for her lawyer. She can communicate online with the lawyer in Mumbai, brief the lawyer about the case. The lawyer can electronically file the case before the court in Delhi, and when the date and time is fixed for hearing, the judge can hear the lawyer while sitting in the court in Delhi with the client watching the proceedings online from Chennai. Mind-blowing. The possibilities are really mind-blowing. Just imagine. Nobody has to travel all the way to any place. You can just sit at home and you can see what is happening with your case. Imagine the time, money, and resources that will be saved. The consequential damage, it is not just to the purse of the client, it is also to the environment. Air travel, the frequency of air travel, the amount of fuel that is spent, how it is polluting our environment, how it is affecting our ozone layer, how it is altering the climate change that is happening all over the world. These are all things, which we have to look for solutions to reduce this now. Now, in case of international arbitrations and mediations, we can work across asynchronous time zones, avoiding the need for expensive travel. Now, thanks to technology, has become redundant. All you need is a laptop. All you need is an internet connection. You don't really need a brick and mortar office to be a lawyer. Not just to be a lawyer, for any other work, for instance. Your work from home has become the watchword during this COVID crisis. And it has really opened our eyes to the immense possibilities that are out there. Undoubtedly, there's a flip side to it. Would the technology be available to all in terms of its cost, as well as its feasibility in underdeveloped areas? This has become a huge controversy now in some remote places in the Northeast, where students are not able to access the online lessons and the online facilities that are there, because they simply don't have the necessary internet connections or the necessary gadgets to be able to access this. The second is the technology really viable for use without technological glitches? Now, yesterday I was in a webinar and all of a sudden, my Wi-Fi went off and I was out of the meeting. And then I had to again, rejoin the meeting. So these kind of glitches keep coming. Can clients who are poor or illiterate be able to afford the use of technology? Now, many of us who have crossed our 50s, who are in our late 50s, even today, sometimes we find ourselves struggling to try to understand technology. We still are not able to figure out how certain applications work on our smartphones or on our laptops. But the children today are very smart. They can easily figure out. I just give my phone to my grandson, and within a few minutes he has it configured and ready to use. If I buy a new phone, I don't spend time at all. I just have to hand it over to him, and he's all of 9 years old. So the thing is, they are able to, they are the generation who have evolved in such a manner that they are able to embrace the technology. Whereas for us, the elders, it takes a little time. But it's not that we can't learn. Now, these issues are real issues. We can't afford to ignore these issues just because we are enamored with the whole idea of using it. Now, the only answer is we need to find solutions. Access to justice is the fundamental right. It is the right, it is a right which has to be available to every citizen. Let us say that we are not using technology. Before the pre-COVID era, when we were not worried about virtual hearings of cases, we were not worried about online mediations, we were not worried about online arbitrations. Everything used to take place in the physical space. Was justice accessible to everybody then? It was not. So why is an objection being raised today that technology will not be accessible to those people? It is a duty of the state to make it available to the poorest of the poor. The non-use of technology is not going to solve the problem of denial of justice to the poor and the marginalized. The solution lies in providing them with that facility to be able to use that technology to access justice. Justice cannot be the exclusive preserve of the rich and the privileged. Why should only a big company be able to go and tap on the doors of the Supreme Court? Why not a poor man? It is not as if, by refusing to adopt technology and continue with the traditional ways, we are going to provide access to justice to the poor. On the other hand, I think we can use technology to make it more accessible. People learn. We all learn. We have learned. I remember when we had those old phones, when we used to ring the numbers, like you have to keep dialing the numbers on the telephone. I remember, one of my uncles who who will start sweating if he had to make a phone call. He was so scared of, he thought he won't be able to do it. But today he's about 78 or 79 years old and he's using a smartphone today. So we learn, people learn. When the necessity arises, we learn. So will people be able to use the technology is the question. Now we are in the millennium where starting from a 4-year-old kid to a 75-year-old person, everybody is learning how to use the technology. So what the courts and the government will have to take the necessary steps to make the technology accessible and affordable to all citizens in order to ensure access to justice. One of the biggest problems that we face is with regard to procedure. Yesterday in one of the webinars that I was part of, senior advocate N.L. Raja was talking and Justice Kannan, former judge of the Chandigarh High Court, was talking about some of the objections that are being raised by the registry. See, we have some very archaic procedures. These procedures need to be simplified. E-filing should do away with formalities which mark the physical filings, because technology can provide the solutions for the problem of storing the documents, developing foolproof system of record maintenance, ensuring the authenticity of the records, accessibility of the stored records. For everything, we can find a solution. Today, we are just embarking on the journey. In other jurisdictions, people are way ahead of it. I'll shortly deal with that. Secondly, third important thing is we will require new laws to streamline the processes and to redefine some of the archaic practices that we had. We need to bring in new laws to adapt to the online system to see how we can use the technology to streamline the process. Then we'll have to, of course, focus on training to staffs, to lawyers, to litigants on how to use the systems for the best outcomes. Now, alternate systems of dispute resolution, like mediation, arbitration, conciliation, these will have to be made mandatory to ensure that the court system doesn't get bogged down with too many cases. Ensure that virtual hearings are held on time and use bespoke technology to avoid any glitches and interruptions. Now, just recall, just before the lockdown started, how many man hours we have wasted in courts, waiting in the court corridors for just our cases to reach. How many man hours we have wasted? Innumerable. the amount of time that has been wasted just waiting for our cases to reach in the court is such a criminal waste of time, because we cannot do anything in that period of time. We cannot leave the court and go and sit in our office and work. We need to be there unless you have some junior or somebody whom you can make them stand there. You have to run from your chamber or your office if the court case is being called. And if the case is about to reach, you go and wait there and suddenly it doesn't reach. All these problems have been there. Now, I feel that these suggestions, like, first of all, providing technology which is accessible and affordable to people, simplifying the procedures, new laws to streamline processes and to redefine how the system will work, training of staff, lawyers, and litigants, making alternate systems of dispute resolution mandatory, and ensuring that good technology is used to avoid any kind of glitches and interruptions. These are the 6 suggestions that I propose to place here in this meeting. Now, today there are so many platforms available, online platforms, to conduct virtual hearings seamlessly and effortlessly. All it needs is a change in the mindset. Right now we are using Zoom. Of course, problems are there. Sometimes you may not be able to hear me. Sometimes if my internet connection fluctuates, you may not be able to hear me clearly. All these problems are there, but nevertheless, it is the best alternative that we have. We have WebEx, we have Google Meet, so on, to facilitate virtual hearings. Advantages are great, only if we have to look at it with an open mind. And that saving in terms of money, resources, and time are tremendous and outweigh the disadvantages. I can give you a small example. When pre-COVID times, I used to go to court to attend mediations. I stay 25 kilometers from the court, 50 kilometers up and down. I used to fill my car with fuel at least twice a week. I filled my car with fuel when the lockdown started. And till now, 2.5 or 3 months almost, only half a tank I have spent. Because I just go out for grocery shopping and come back. It's not that I'm not going to go out post-COVID at all. But what I'm saying is, the daily travel all the way there, just to go and be told that, the parties have not come, or the lawyers have asked for time. So you have to come back again empty-handed. You don't do anything over there, nothing constructive. You're only losing your time going and coming to the court. There are advantages, definitely. Everything is under your control. You can decide what time in consultation with the other parties who are involved. You can fix your own time. Virtual hearings of the courts, for example, you can fix the time with the court. The court will be telling you that what time your matter will be taken up. And unlike the physical hearings, virtual hearings can be organized in such a way that if a case, a time is fixed for a case, it will be taken up on that at that time, to ensure that this is certainly going to be a hearing. Unlike in physical, when you physically go to the court, you keep waiting and the hearing doesn't take place. Now, I use Zoom for online mediations. I wouldn't say I have done many mediations with Zoom, but I managed to do 2 mediations with Zoom. And, tremendous advantages in that. In fact, at one point of time, it so happened, this happened also in a training program that I attended. We forgot that we were online. It became so, we were so comfortable doing it, the parties and me, and also in the training program, the other students and the trainer, and all of us became so comfortable that we forgot that we were online. We were talking as if we were physically present in front of each other. And for example, if you take Zoom, an application like Zoom, you can have private sessions. You can have breakout rooms, and you can take the 2 parties to 2 different breakout rooms. As a host, you can enter one room, do a private session with one party, go to the other room, do a private session with the other party, bring them back to a joint session, and you can continue with the mediation. You can share the screen with them. You can show on the screen anything that you want to make a note of, or if you want to frame the issues, or if you want to put some proposals on in black and white. You can simply share the screen and put it up before the parties and tell them, am I right I have just listed the issues that arise for consideration on this mediation. Please check and confirm to me if it is all right. So you see how the possibilities are enormous, endless possibilities. And international mediations are taking place today. They are actually happening today across asynchronous time zones. Like somebody sitting in Hong Kong at the time there will be 11:30 in the afternoon for him probably, and a mediator who's sitting in the US whose time will be 12:30 in the night, and somebody sitting, another party who's sitting in Dubai whose time will be maybe in the afternoon, some late afternoon or early afternoon or something. So different time zones, people sitting in different countries can just come on the screen and they can talk and they can resolve. Just look at the advantages of that. Now, let me also talk a little about the artificial intelligence in the legal profession. See, there are companies, there are many companies who are working to find ways of developing technology that will manage very laborious tasks in different industries for better speed and accuracy. Now, in the legal profession, AI has already found its way into supporting lawyers and clients alike. Now, the growing interest in applying AI in law, it is slowly transforming the profession and closing in on the works of paralegals, legal researchers, and litigators. There are different ways in which AI is currently applied in the legal profession, and technology providers are trying to streamline the work processes. Now, I just did a little bit of research and I found that there are 6 major categories where the AI applications are coming in very useful. First is due diligence. Now, usually litigators perform due diligence with the help of AI tools to uncover background information. This would include, contract review, legal research, electronic discovery, and so on. The second is prediction technology, an AI software that generates results that forecast the litigation outcome. So they use various algorithms to find out how this litigation is going to end, what are the possibilities of the outcome. May not always be correct, but it indicates to you based on analysis of case law, previously decided cases, on identical facts. All these things, they generate results that forecast the outcome of the litigation. The third thing is legal analytics. I hope I'm audible to everybody.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Now, legal analytics, lawyers can use data points from the past case law, win or loss rates, and a judge's history to be used for trends and patterns. So even it goes to the extent of analyzing how a particular judge has decided matters of a similar nature. So the artificial intelligence is being developed to that level where the legal analytics you can use that to come to a conclusion as to how your case is going to fare before a particular judge. Okay. Document automation. The fourth thing is document automation, where law firms are using software templates to create filled out documents based on data input. So if you want to create a contract, or if you want to draft a plain, or if you want to draft a will, all you need to do is fill in the data, and the computer turns up with the template of the document that you need to prepare. So your work is substantially reduced in that. Of course, you can make your corrections and you can make whatever practical changes that you need to make. The fifth thing is intellectual property. Now, AI tools guide lawyers in analyzing large IP portfolios and drawing insights from the content. The last is electronic billing. So lawyers' billable hours are computed automatically. So these are the 6 applications for which artificial intelligence is being used internationally. I can give you a small example here to explain how overwhelmingly powerful such applications can be. For example, JP Morgan, they are investment bankers and finance, basically they deal with finance. JP Morgan in 2016 June They tapped AI by developing in-house legal technology tools. So they developed a program called COIN, COIN, which is short for Contract Intelligence. Now, this software extracts 150 attributes from 12,000 commercial credit agreements and contracts in only a few seconds. So it studies 12,000 commercial credit agreements and selects the attributes of these, about 150 attributes of these, in just a few seconds. Now, this is equivalent to, now you will be surprised if you hear this, this is equivalent to 36,000 hours of legal work by its lawyers and loan officers, according to JP Morgan. Now, why they developed COIN? They developed COIN after they noticed an annual average of 12,000 new wholesale contracts which contained some blatant errors. So they decided to develop the software to avoid these errors. So they are now able, they are implementing that with very good results. Now, I came across, another software developed in the US called ROS Intelligence, ROSS, ROS Intelligence. Now, every lawsuit and court case requires diligent legal research. However, the amount of links to open, cases to read, information to note, it can be a very overwhelming experience for lawyers because we have very limited time in doing research. Now, lawyers can take advantage of the natural language search capability of ROS Intelligence by asking questions. It need not be couched in legalese, it can be in natural, ordinary English. And you can receive information such as recommended reading, related case law, and all other secondary sources. Now, as with everything good, there is also something bad about it. It is not as if these applications are entirely problem-free. Now, it has been found that the engineers who design these algorithms have their own biases and what would be a relevant case that their respective algorithm will show to the user. So sometimes, the algorithms will come up with, will throw up data which the engineer would feel is relevant because he would have designed the algorithm in that manner. So the engineer's, bias will be reflected in that. Now, in India itself, a lot of developments are happening. Artificial intelligence, it stands at the intersection of law and technology. And a whole lot of, possibilities are opening up of not just making our justice delivery system more efficient and more accessible, but also in increasing our efficiency as lawyers, mediators, arbitrators, and judges. For example, I was listening to a presentation by a company called Resolve Disputes Online Technology Limited. Now, their platform claims to provide state-of-the-art case management, file sharing, appointment scheduling, synchronous and asynchronous communication technology with private case notes, text and audio video technology, real settlement and award builder, real-time settlement and award builder, and the ability to choose from a variety of dispute resolution choices such as negotiation, mediation, and arbitration. So now there are many companies who are working on these lines, okay, who are developing case management modules, which you can use to keep track of your cases. So if you just open your computer, the case that is listed for that day, which is going to come up, will be shown along with your client's details, along with the case status, along with what happened in the previous hearing. Everything will come on. So the possibilities are enormous. Now, there are giant strides being made globally in utilizing technology to optimize the profession. So the idea is, to become more efficient, to work at a really fast pace, and to deliver the best service. Now, anything new is always frightening. We always have our doubts. Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? We have some ethical issues. Like, for example, we were discussing the possibility of providing online mediation training. Uma Ramanathan, many of you are familiar with, and she and I were discussing with our other colleagues as to what are the problems that we would encounter if you do online mediation training, because that personal touch will be lacking. The ability to develop the bonding with the trainees will be lacking. The ability to reach out and connect will not be there. because it will be disjointed. It will be, the personal touch will not be there. So, is it really worthwhile doing the training was something that we were thinking about. And then we decided that no, it presents an opportunity and we should try to see how best we can bring in all these facets into online training also. So anything new is frightening, doubts exist, whether it will work, whether it will not work, problems arise in the implementation, questions arise in terms of the accessibility, but the answer lies in finding solutions, innovating, developing, and growing. Yesterday's webinar, I said, just because some problems are there, you don't throw the baby with the bathwater. You have to see what you can do about it, how you can work around it, try to find the solutions. So it is not as if it's going to be a cakewalk for us. It's going to be a difficult job. We have to work around it. We have to develop the thing. But look at the long-term benefits of it. If supposing, let's say that 1,000 cases are there before a court of law, if 700 cases can be disposed of through virtual hearings, through online mediations, or by referring them to online arbitrations or conciliation, the judges can really focus on those 300 cases and deliver justice over there, where the justice is really deserved, instead of wasting time merely adjourning matters. So we have huge possibilities. So I think it's time that we really get used to technology, embrace it, adapt it, adopt it, adapt it, and adapt ourselves to it, and wrap our minds around the whole idea that yes, this is what the world is going to be in the future, and start using it effectively. So I think I'll stop there. I hope I have not exceeded my time, Tangachan. I think I've taken about.
No, we have enough time. We have enough time.
Okay. No, but I have, I think I have what I wanted to say, I have said. So if any further questions are there or.
Yes.
There is one question in the chat box from Iram Majid. You can see it there, in chat box.
Chat box, is it?
Yes, yes.
I'm just checking. There are many comments here, but can you, if you're seeing that question, can you just read it out?
Yes, yes. 1 second. Let me show.
There are some complaints about the audio. I hope it became better later on. Huh?
Now it's okay. Now it's okay.
Okay.
So, 1 second.
Yeah, Iram Majid's question,
Yes.
sir.
Yes,
I got it. Sir, can the AI also understand the pattern of the human brain? That's a very interesting question, Iram. I came across this information in one of the training programs that we were doing with ADR ODR International, where we were told that IBM is developing a computer called Watson. Now, Watson is developing, they're developing an algorithm which will look at different features of the human face and able to predict what exactly a person is feeling at that given point of time. So we are looking at something which is really frightening. Imagine sitting before a computer and the computer suddenly asking, Jawad, hey, why are you so sad, man? What do I tell the computer? I mean, it's mind-blowing, really. But these are the possibilities that are coming up. And undoubtedly, I think Uma has made some comments somewhere. In a high-context society like ours, how will venting of emotions be possible for parties to cool down and think objectively in the virtual space? That's a good question, Uma. That's a question that actually is worrying all of us, as you have rightly pointed out. Now, how will venting of emotions be possible? Let me give a small example. Like supposing I'm talking to somebody with whom I'm very upset on the telephone. Let's say that God forbid Tangachan and I ever fight, and I'm calling up Tangachan and I'm very upset with what he has done or something. I want to complain about him, and I speak to him. Am I not venting my emotions to him there online? And if Tangachan responds with empathy And Thangachan says the right things and says that, Jawad, I can understand that you're very upset about this. Let's just cool down a little and let's look at it objectively, and let's see how we can discuss it and take it forward. Maybe it will help me to, calm down, thinking that Thangachan has given me an empathetic listening and has understood my problem. So I don't really think that, just being on a computer face to face or on a telephone line talking to each other should really stand in the way. I came across this word called digital empathy, which was used by Rahim Shamji in one of his training programs. So digital empathy is a concept that I think is catching up globally. In a high context society like ours, of course, as you rightly said, it's not going to be so easy. It's going to be difficult because we have to get used to the medium first, the medium of expressing ourselves. A lot of people till date are not used to still, speaking on the telephone. You might see some people have this habit of keeping the telephone to their ear and shouting at the top of their voice, because they think that because the voice has to be carried over the airwaves, unless they speak loudly, it may not, get transmitted to the other side. I think probably on that assumption, they keep shouting on the phone. So we need to get used to it. But I think once we get used to it, it will happen. I think Srilal has asked a question. While online mediation, arbitration, or conciliation can be good for commercial disputes, would it not be a little difficult in case of matters involving emotions or high level of confidentiality? Srilal, I think confidentiality is definitely a problem in doing online mediations. As I said, emotions, I've already said that, we should develop some way of recognizing emotions and, allowing parties to give vent to their feelings on online platforms also. I can see your handsome face, Srilal. But confidentiality is definitely an issue. That is where I said, in one of the earlier webinars where I spoke, I said on the aspect of confidentiality, we need to have laws for that. We need to, ensure that, for example, if supposing I'm doing an online mediation and supposing you and let's say Suresh are the parties, and I'll have to ask you and Suresh to, just scan the room with your camera to see if anybody else is there. And we can have an agreement beforehand that nothing will be recorded and nothing will be used. And we need also a law in place to say that any matter that is recorded in an online mediation surreptitiously by a party without the consent of the others cannot be used in a court of law. And I would go one step further to say that there should also be a penalty that is imposed on a party who misuses a confidential proceeding that takes place online. So I hope that answers the question.
There is one question from Sangeeta.
Yeah. There is one question from Sumant.
Yes.
A law student from KL University, Andhra Pradesh.
Yes.
So what steps shall be adopted by a law student to get through updated and technological advancements post-COVID-19? Well, I think you will have to find out whether there are any courses. Like I attended a course on online mediations, how to use the Zoom platform effectively. That was very helpful to me. So I think similarly, if there are courses available, any online courses or offline courses that are available, I think you may have to attend those courses and get yourself admitted. Sangeeta has said that I remember in a webinar, Rahim Shamji said that confidentiality agreement is signed beforehand. Yes, it is. It has to be. That's what I said when I answered Srilal. We need to have the confidentiality agreement in place beforehand. And we also simultaneously we need a law, and there should be there should be a consensus among the judges also that they will not allow or accept any material that is placed before them in breach of the confidentiality of an online mediation.
And more or less same question from Uma ma'am also.
Yeah. The Uma has actually answered, I think, Srilal.
Yes.
So thanks, Uma. She says, unfortunately, in a dispute, every individual sees the other as being wrong, and there are no shades of gray. it is also the attitude in commercial disputes. And so we have to be conscious of how emotions are handled as it dictates behavior. That's right. So of course, there are some disadvantages, like for example, I can see only from neck upwards, I can see everybody. I can't see anyone's hands and legs, how they are positioned. And so body language will be the casualty here. So we can't really find out the body language of party to see what the party, only from the facial expressions we will have to judge to see how the party is feeling about something. So there will be some restriction there, but as I said, everything can't come together. Everything comes with its own flaws, with its own drawbacks, like how human beings come in different forms, shapes, and sizes, with different mentalities, with their own individualities. We accept them for what they are, and similarly, technology also has to be accepted with its own inherent limitations and problems. The question is, what is the alternative? Are we going to stop put a stop to the justice delivery system, or are we going to stop online mediations because there are some issues relating to those, or are we going to go ahead and use these things in the best manner possible and adapt them in whatever best way we see we can do?
Our Parimalji from Mumbai is with us now.
Yes, sir. How are you?
He himself is muted. I cannot unmute him. He has muted.
Yeah, sir, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Yes. Please
No,
mute, sir.
Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
Sir, please unmute. Unmute.
There.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Can't hear you, sir. Unable to hear you.
Nice to hear you and Pankaj.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Everything is so clear, no questions.
Can you just pull the mic down? Your mic is up. Just pull the mic down. Yeah.
Yes.
Everything is so clear.
Yeah.
I also belong to that generation of taking phone and then talking loudly, thinking that the voice will not go to the other side.
No, we all belong to.
I have still to adapt to the technology.
The 1960s born and before 1960, we are all trying to become. We are trying to evolve.
Yeah.
Trying to evolve to use technology.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure, sir. My pleasure.
And Giribala ma'am also is now with us.
Who?
She herself, Giribala.
Oh, yes. Giribala.
Yes. Because she has muted herself.
Okay.
Vijayda, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
You can invite all.
Then you take the charge.
Allah, you invite all those persons, so you know them. So you can very well invite.
Please raise your hand, those who want to. Any questions now? Please raise your hands so that I can unmute you. Vaidyaji, any more questions from your side?
Oh, nothing more.
Nothing. Okay. Okay. Then.
See, I just wanted to say one more thing. I was reading very interesting, as I was researching for this topic, I came across one article which talks about, how the large firms in the US, which bill on the basis of hours of work done. Even we have senior counsel here in Delhi, charging by the hour. So, when the billing by hour happens, if supposing they are doing a due diligence, or if they are doing some, opinion writing or something, they charge by the hour. So depending on how much time the junior associate spends on doing the research, on coming up with the data. All these things are built to the client. But now with the advent of artificial intelligence and software which delivers this information in a matter of seconds, like I gave you the example of JP Morgan, where what would take 36,000 hours of work can be thrown up can come up in just about a few minutes. So now they are facing a big challenge in their billing systems, because it's an ethical issue for them now. So the firms which are willing to adopt the artificial intelligence technology and deliver more efficient service to the clients at a lesser billing are preferred more by the clients than the big firms which are not willing to adapt that and which still insist on raising huge bills. So, it is all, demand and supply driven. Like, the more you adapt yourself, the more you will become popular, and the more you will get, clients will find you to be more efficient and acceptable. So it's like it's a tightrope walk that we have to do.
Yes.
So any other questions?
Kavitaji, can you hear us?
Okay, Sangeeta
Kavita
has made a very interesting point.
Yes.
She says, except the confidentiality issue, venting of emotions is possible. On the lighter side, fisticuffs can be avoided. That is definitely something which we which is to the mediator's advantage, because parties will be sitting in two different places. There's no chance for them to attack each other. The only thing they can do is probably damage their gadgets. Good one, Sangeeta.
And Vijay Krishnan sir from Chennai also with us now.
Yeah.
But he himself muted. I cannot unmute him. Yes, sir, please.
No, Jawad, just to say that it has been a beautiful presentation from your side, and very comprehensive and very clear, very objective as well. But there is a saying, that it's difficult to teach old dogs new tricks. It's difficult to teach old dogs new tricks. But of course, then what is old is the question now. In these days, what is old is a question. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday. He says that about 80 years is considered upper middle age now.
Yes.
So 70 onwards is middle age. So that gives me also people like me some hope, I suppose. So to learn something new.
Thanks, Vijay. Thanks. You're giving us a lot of hope. All those of us who have crossed 55 now.
Then Shiraz. Jayarajan sir. Thank you. Jeta.
Yes. What of thanks, sir?
Vinod.
No.
No. Let me invite. Vinod.
Invite.
No questions. No questions.
Vinod.
Vinod, കേൾക്കുന്നില്ലേ? Vinod, can you hear us? Vinod.
കേൾക്കുന്നില്ല.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Tangachan, any other person?
Hello?
Yes.
I think Giribala Singh ma'am is on the line.
Yeah. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
We can hear you. Yes, ma'am, we can hear you. There is a question from Giribala ma'am in the chat box.
Yeah, I saw that. How could we use AI and its tools to train panel advocates of legal services institutions? Well, I think you need to, bring in somebody who is well versed with that particular tool and train them how to use it, man. That is the only way I can think of, because that is being technology driven. I think a technological expert who knows how to use that particular platform will have to come in and train the lawyers on how to use this in the legal services context.
Yes. I think there is no more questions from PG. Any questions from your
Yes,
side?
nothing more, nothing more, nothing more. Excellent, sir. Excellent, sir. Jawad, sir. Very excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for finding time to spare with us.
No, it's my pleasure always.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you.
I must thank you for the honor.
Okay, thank you, sir. Yes, okay, it's okay.
I think we can conclude session now. Vijayda, please unmute you. Please unmute your mic. Hello.
Is it okay?
Yeah, we can hear.
Yes, I think, sir, we can conclude, isn't it? So, can you hear me, Dangaj sir?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So, it was a very informative class for us, as many of our participants suggested. Only thing is, as commented by several of our senior members, how far the technology will rather work among the generation like us was the question. Whatever it is, only doubts that we feel is it was very well presented, and how convenient it can be used during the coming eras is very clear. It was enlightening all of us. But what we felt is, in the lower courts, the professional aspects are different from the higher courts. Most of us feel that in Supreme Court or High Court even, they are mainly basing on the drafted items and decisions are being taken by the judges. But it is totally different in the lower courts, I think. I think Mr. Jawad has taken note of that also. During almost in the lower court, the decision or discretion is generated or rather cultivated by our act. In most of the cases, we know the judge will not be very much agreeable at the time when it is presented for the first time. Subsequently, after presenting all other details connected with it, we will be cultivating a kind of discretion in our favor. If it is through these mechanical devices, how it is possible? I have my own experience. I think it's only for me. I have my own experience. My younger brother was arrested, suspecting that he is an accident. As a matter of fact, he was charged with 3 or 4 cases. He was produced before a lower court, before a magistrate. I went there and rather started my submissions. The only point that I have rather impressed the court is, at last, after arguing all the facts, I asked a question to the court. My father is an old, he was the MLA here, MP here, and he is the person who has formation of CPM, etc. He was the person, one among the 6 or 7 persons. He was in the freedom movement also, subsequently also. Only one question I put, that is, the father of this accused, police always wanted him. They came there. British police came there in search of a congressman. Subsequently, communist police came there in search of a Marxist. Now, Marxist police is coming in search of a Naxalite to that house. There is one mother there. You did not give a single day or a single night to sleep. Which is the date on which you will allow his mother to sleep? That was the question. Court sat, looked at me once. He don't know that he is my brother. Subsequently, he granted bail in 4 cases. That is exactly the discretion that is cultivated by me. That presentation, or rather chance of presenting before a court, looking at the changes of that person, or rather judicial officer, that will be missing when we are introducing all these devices only for the purpose of making our communications. There are several such incidents in my life. Once one Gauri was arrested in connection with a case. Before the court I went, no other points to argue. There was a child on her lap. She was some immoral allegations are also there against that lady. Only point that is put to the court is, sir, this lady, according to the allegations of the prosecution, is a call girl of this generation. There is a female child in her lap. Are we to give another lady for the next generation? That was the question. Usually he used to deny bail, but being a lady, bail was granted. So like that, there is no chance for us to cultivate, or rather make out the discretion in our favor. Looking at that is the only thing is at the situation that is generated at the situation. All those are lost. I have read a story here. Son told father, see, you walked up to the house of my sister, that is his own daughter, and saved 50 rupees. But I paid 50 rupees and saved 1 hour because it was so short. But the father said, no, my son, you saved 50 rupees, but I saved not only half an hour, you saved half an hour. I saved not only 50 rupees, but I saved the heartfelt relationship with the several persons through all the way from this house to my daughter's house. Like that, human relationship, etc., will be lost if we are completely depending on these devices for the purpose of communication. But one thing we will have to agree, that is, there are several hours, human hours, being lost while utilizing the same old method of our court proceedings. How these new methods, modern technologies can help us to save time and other things from being lost, etc., can be looked into, and that is to be discussed also. But however, the performance in court, the chances of presenting matters with an art of advocacy, etc., we cannot lose. That is what I feel. However, hearing you, I feel this is the only method, and this is the method to be adopted in future, and nothing else is to be looked into. That is my feeling. But however, I feel that what is being lost by that will be a very great loss, and how that can be comprehended is the point that I. So, thank you, sir, very much, and it is enlightening us on all these points. I'll be inviting Jagada to for vote of thanks. Before that,
if I may just interrupt for a minute.
Yes.
To try and answer the question that you have posed. See, I fully and more than 100% I agree with what you have said. See, nothing can replace the human relational aspect of who we are. Like, we are human beings. We are social animals. We are the only probably species in the whole world who communicate through spoken words, and through our body language, through our emotions and everything. Now that is definitely irreplaceable. We cannot, technology can never, substitute that ever. And as you rightly said, the art of advocacy is also something that is going to be deeply impacted by it. But there are some also some realities that we have to face. It is not as if technology is going to completely replace the actual hearings of court cases. We will be having a problem until this pandemic lasts. Once it is over, maybe by the end of 2021, we should be back on the rails and our courts will start functioning normally. But what I'm saying is, let us not close it out because it doesn't address certain points, which I think you also agree with me on that. Let us not shut it off simply because it doesn't address certain facets of our human relations. Because in terms of, as you rightly said, in terms of saving time, saving money, if supposing a poor person has to get justice immediately, this might be the answer for that. If supposing he's unable to travel to a long distance to meet a lawyer or to go to the court to file a proceeding, there should be a shortcut method for him. Like yesterday's webinar, Mr. NL Raja, senior advocate, was suggesting that for e-filing we can have kiosks where trained people will be there and any litigant can go there and give them the details and they will comply with the filing formalities and file it. So when we talk of access to justice, technology is going to be one of the tools. It is not going to be the only tool. It is going to be one of the tools in addition to what we already have. So, and it will be definitely augmenting the access to justice idea rather than from it, is what I'm trying to emphasize here. So all I'm saying is, let us not disown technology because it doesn't meet certain requirements from the human relational perspective. But let us look at a wider perspective and see how we can best use it to not to supplement but to complement the human relational aspect. That is all I say. Thank you, sir.
Yes, yes, sir.
Jagada.
Yes. Hope I am audible, sir.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Hope I am audible to all, sir.
Yes, yes.
Sir, I am Jagada Bai, practicing at Tellicherry course, and on behalf of All India Lawyers Union, Kannur District Committee, I am here. And first of all, sir, a lot of dignitaries, mediator trainees, and senior lawyers from different parts of the country participated in this meeting. This is the 21st session presented by our district committee, and in this era of the era of automobiles and atom bombs, sir, has been paved way to the era of electronics. So we can't just reject or dishonor gadgets or technology. So we have to cope up with those. Otherwise, we will be illiterate in this era. So, sir, what I have presented before us, beautiful one, latest situations. Otherwise, we will be illiterate from our next generation. So, there are problems, of course, as pointed out by Vijaykumar sir, because we could not woke up the social conscience of the court, especially before the lower court. We face that difficulty, like a custody issue, child custody issue. And in such matters, we have to wake up the conscience of the social conscience of the court. And we have to rather exhibit our social commitment also before the court. Such personal relations will be missing. Anyway, we could not reject or dishonor this technology. So we have to cope up with it. So you presented a wonderful session. And sir, we are thankful for you to be with us for this and spending so much precious time for us. And on behalf of the All India Lawyers Union Kannur District Committee, I thank you, sir, first of all. And you taught us the endless possibilities of internet. about artificial intelligence, legal analytics, and the document automation. That is true. We need such gadgets nowadays. Otherwise, we will be far behind in the world. Anyhow, for survival, we adapted the legal continuing legal education during this lockdown period. But very much, and there was very much a period of enlightenment. So we had opportunities to hear a number of brilliant faculties, especially Sushila ma'am, you and all others, and for introducing such wonderful personalities. We are thankful to Advocate Thangachan. And one more word, to the all other faculties who participated here to share their wisdom. And we are all thankful to all of such senior lawyers from India, all over India. And it was a wonderful experience to hear you all. Once again, I thank for myself and for the All India Lawyers Union who conducted this program. Thank you, sir, for being with us for this much time.
Yes.
I may end up the, I think I'm transferring the mic to end up the session.
Thank you once again
Close
for the opportunity.
Okay. Vijayana, I think let us now we can end this.
I think we can close. So thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, sir. Thank you, Jawad sir.
Thank you.
Close.
Okay. With your permission, I'm ending this session.
Okay.